So I've finished the greenery stage. I've made a real effort to sort of stretch the greenery out across the vase by making sure I'm not pushing the stems straight down into the bottom of the jug. And that way it just gives a different look. So often when you're arranging flowers, you just let all the stems slide down to the bottom of the vase. And this technique just allows you to do something a little bit out of the ordinary and really sets off your garden greenery if you can get hold of it. And if you can't get hold of garden greenery, just make the arrangement and use more flowers. The first flowers I'm going to put in are my roses, my wildflowers. I've already taken off the guard petals, so as they mature they're really going to open out. And I like to work in threes and make triangle placements. So I'm going to have one rose a bit longer, one a bit shorter, and then one really quite short. And if you look when I've done the finished arrangement and just keep looking for the repeated patterns of these triangles, it's just a really good way to get started without overly thinking, what flowers do I put where? And I like to work with one flower at a time, so I'll put all my roses into the vase and then I'll come back and add my next lot of flowers. So recut the stems, and I'm going to try and put this rose in practically horizontally, making sure it's hitting the water here. So it's probably, the stem is probably hitting just down here on my jug. It's not going to the bottom of the vase. So that's nice and secure. The next rose I'm going to have a little bit shorter, so I'll measure that up, hold it against my jug just so I can get a reasonably good idea of where to cut the flower. Pinch off the leaves that are going to get into the water line and push that down. You might need to wiggle the stems around a little bit if you're having difficulty getting the flowers to sit where you want them to sit. And then my next rose, have that one practically upright. So I've created a little triangle arrangement here. Now as I've got a few more roses, I could repeat that on the other side. So actually I've got 2 pink and 2 white. It'd be much easier if I had 3 of one and 3 of the other. What I'm going to do is to put the pink ones in centrally, repeating the pattern. So one pink rose really quite low, next one a little bit longer, coming out towards this edge, and then the white rose stretching out here across the other side. Now, as you come to work on your own arrangement, you'll be able to move around it much more easier than I can. And in fact, sometimes I put my flowers onto a turntable so I can spin them round and really get a good idea of what I'm doing. So you really need to have a look from the front and see what it looks like, and decide also where the front's going to be. Are you making arrangements an all-round design that look good in all directions, or do you want something that's front-facing? So I know I'm going to have this displayed against a wall, and I want it to look really fabulous from the front, but you can't have it looking too bare at the back, because you do need some physical weight and an extra dimension. So looking from the side where my handle is, actually these flowers are going to be at the back and probably will be propped up a little bit by the wall. And it just helps give a much more of a 3D feel to everything. I've got 1 rose left, so I might as well put that in. So I've worked in my triangle of 3 roses here, and then my triangle here with 2 pink and a white. And then I should put my last rose in, I've got it, and just find a space for it. So I'm going to have my alliums as my next wow flower coming up in the middle of my design, and I've cut them, so I've got a tall one, a middle-sized one and a shorter one, and starting with my tall first. So I corkscrew that stem into the vase, giving it a twist, and you'll see that it's standing upright on its own, and that's because I've got all those other stems which are creating this framework for the flowers to stand up. And then here I'm coming off a little bit to one side with the second placement, and then I'm going to come a little bit off the other side. So it's creating a line through the middle of the vase. 1, 2, 3, but they're all slightly offset from one another, just to give a little bit of movement. I'm then going to reinforce that line using my blue iris. Now these have opened out a little bit. I've got a really fully opened one there, part open, and then just budding up And the idea here is that you put the fullest flower right into the centre of the arrangement, and then the next open one, and go like that. So you've got the bud, part open, nearly open, and fully open. And again, it's a way of visually weighting your arrangement. And I'm just going to reinforce this line I made with my alliums. They don't show up very much because they're intermingled with all the other bits of green. So I shall come in quite low with that first iris, and that will be really eye-catching at the bottom of the vase. And then a little bit higher, measuring up against the vase, so I know pretty much where to cut. And if in doubt, cut long and then come back and cut a bit shorter later. A little higher again. And twisting if you're having difficulty getting down into the bottom of the vase. And then the last iris I can have really quite long and coming towards the back of the vase. And just making sure that you've actually got your flowers in water. As I put that in, I could feel it going down the back of my vase. So you can see they're starting to build up. This is the back of the arrangement, but still got lots of visual interest. And as we come round, you can see my original placement of my 3 roses there, the grouping of roses to this side, my 3 alliums, and then they were supported, visually supported, by the irises coming through, so your eyes being led up. So at any stage, you could stop your arrangement as soon as you're happy with it. It may be that you run out of time, and that's one of the reasons why I use one lot of flowers at a time. So it's just a really methodical way of working. The more time and the more flowers you've got, you can keep adding and adding and adding and adding. So next up, I've got my irises, my beautiful scented irises, the yellow and the white. And I can't quite decide whether to put in both flowers or just one or the other. I'm going to start though with the yellow freesia. I think it'll look really great against the yellow markings of my irises. So here, as this is one of the wispy flowers, you can start to intermingle it throughout the arrangement. So we've got this placement here. We know there's a line going up the middle with the irises and the alliums, a line coming to the side with the roses here, and a line with the roses the other side. And you don't want it to look too much like you're painting by numbers. And this is the great thing about adding the wispy flowers in, because it sort of blends everything together. Now here, I'm going to pinch off that freesia. It's opened out a bit much and just looks past its best. So recutting the stems, and as I turn the vase towards me, I will go through and just put the stems in where I can see a space and fill it out, and just a lovely flash of yellow, and the longest flower stems will just sort of start to nod gently, and that's what we're looking for, a little bit of natural movement in your flower arrangements. You don't want it looking really stiff and static. You want it to move in the breeze a little bit. These are getting a little bit tangled up. So some flower stems I'm pushing straight down, others I'm being quite brave with the angling on them. They're not horizontal, but they're not far off going in horizontally. Some of the stems I will keep really long. For this first batch, I've gone in as quite long stems. And then the second lot, I'm going to cut them a little bit shorter. So I've got a central layer in. My eye is being taken from the outside edge of the vase straight through into the middle, and so my eye can feast on all the different flowers. So I think that's looking really great, and you can see that the yellow has really brought the arrangement to life. I've still got a few stems left. I don't think I'm going to put the white stems in there. Not quite sure. What I have decided is I'm definitely not going to put in my spray chrysanthemums. I just think they're going to look too large and too heavy now, so I'll set those aside for another day. What I will add in is some of my eupatorium. So I like the little flash of white leaves here. Now I just need to go through here. I've noticed that there's a couple of stems that are just looking a bit bedraggled, and to pinch off these larger leaves. And here I've got a branch of 3, so what I might do is cut off the side shoots, so it means I can put 2 flowers in quite low down. Just to fill up a little gap. And then have my larger, longer flower out towards the back. So it may be that you can get lots of placements with your flowers. Don't just rely on the fact that you've got one stem, meaning one placement. If it's got little branches coming off, you make your flower work twice as hard by putting it in 2 different places. So I think I can see a gap here, and it's just putting the flowers in where you can see a gap. And adding in as many as you like. Now for me, I'm starting to feel that I haven't got much more space left in my vase. So again, I think I'll leave those last few stems. And if I turn that round there, there's sort of a 3/4 view here. I know that my lowest iris here is bang in the centre of the arrangement.